track called California from an album called Pony. Al Park's first solo album in over 20 years. Al Park is with me now. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Kim. How are you?
I'm very well. How are you?
I'm very well too, thank you.
People are very excited about you coming on. People are remembering. Somebody, I'm just trying to find the text, they wandered into some bar in Littleton and to their astonishment and pleasure, they found you playing.
Well, that's not surprising, Kim. I play in the bar every Wednesday in bars in Littleton, so yeah.
Tell me about that track. You wrote it in 1700 and what? 1979. I think you went to California in 1979, didn't you?
I did go there. It's kind of strange how that's emerged because I did write it then, and I did a recording back in those days of it. And these young guys I work with, Adam Hadaway and Elmore Jones, Hadaway's been pretty much through my whole life of recordings, and
we'll hear a track from him and the Haunters a little later, yeah?
Yeah, he's been quite an amazing guy, and as much as I've been supportive of him, he's sort of the tables have turned, and Hadaway went through my songs and he said, "We've got to record this song," and so like it came to life again, and in a totally different way. Originally, funny enough, I recorded it with my neighbour Bill Hammond playing drums, and
that's such I never knew that Bill Hammond played the drums. We're talking about the famous artist and recently deceased Bill Hammond, who played the drums, and that led to the band called Old Dennis, didn't it?
Yeah. That was such a fun band.
Why is it called? Stupid question. I mean, I wanted to ask you why your album's called Pony, but let's start with Old Dennis first of all. Why?
Band names. I so remember this. Bill and I used to hang out quite a lot. We were probably just going through a time of our lives, and we were neighbours, and we were jamming around at night time with him. He was a very sloppy kind of rhythmic drummer, and we were driving through town in my old FJ one day, and he said, "We should have a band." And I said, "Oh, yeah, what are we going to call it?" And around Christchurch at that time, there were a whole lot of these signs with an O and a horizontal diagonal line through it, and a D, and we'd just gone past one, and he said, "We'll call it OD." And I said, "Well, what does OD mean?" And he said, "Old Dennis." And it stuck. And that night, went home and wrote a song called Dirty Old Dennis, funny enough, which I missed my big opportunity when Dennis Connor did the Dirty on New Zealand, because it actually had sort of like a reference to, it could have been appropriate for Dennis Connor's behaviour at the time. But anyway, that's how that came about.
No, but sorry to be obtuse, Al, but what was the OD in the original? What did it mean?
Well, it was hard to know what it meant. It was some symbol, and no one actually really could come up with an explanation for it, but it was painted on places all over Christchurch. I remember seeing one out in Godley Head, of all places, on a cliffside.
And it was an O with a line through it and a D.
The line dissected the O and then just a D. Yeah, I had no idea, but I bet someone will call you and tell you.
No, awaiting information. All right, so that's Old Dennis. Why have you called your album Pony?
Well, that once again came from Hadaway, whose album, that the track I'm going to play off of Hadaway's is called Rooster, and they just thought, there's a song there's a song that's kind of on the album called Ride Your Pony as well. So I guess that's a bit of both of those things, but he was pretty emphatic that we should call it Pony. And so it's a funny thing, when you just spent your life not doing a lot of recording stuff and everything, and you encounter guys who that's what they do all the time. And so I've just gone with Adam Hadaway's plan, and so we're calling it Pony.
What were you doing in California in 1979?
I was kind of like the song. I was escaping I guess, my relationship with Sound, and I just went off to hoon out. And
your relationship with who?
Well, an amazing woman, actually. A woman called...
Sorry, you were just going to say a name. Sorry, carry on.
Well, I did.
You can if you want, but what I'm referring to is a relationship that is on the record between you and Jane Campion.
Yeah, it wasn't that relationship.
Okay.
That's yeah, that was a bit earlier when I was living in Wellington. When I'm from Wellington and I was living in Wellington, and yeah, that's pretty sensitive. So.
Yeah. Well, I gather it is because, as you pointed out, in Jane Campion's Top of the Lake, Detective Senior.
Did I point this out?
Yeah, apparently you did. Detective Senior Sergeant Al Parker, the corrupt cop, may indeed be a tribute to you.
Well, I'm not sure it's a tribute. I think it's pretty sensible that Kim. When I learned about it, it was a bit strange, but like I can't deny that Jane's an amazing woman, been hugely successful, and it was a pretty special time in my life, I have to say, in the early 70s, Victoria.
All right.
Lots of people,
I interrupted you, as is my wont, and you were telling me that you were fleeing from a failed relationship and ended up in California.
Yeah. And I ended up in California, and I really, in my life, haven't really had much of a, ambition, I guess, but I just thought I'd go there and check it out. I originally intended when I left uni to go on the hippie trail up to London, and I bought a van and ended up putting some miles on it and ended up in Christchurch. And back in about 75, Christchurch was a really beautiful place. And, I met someone else, a friend of a friend who suggested that he had a good way of opening up a junk shop, and I was right into that idea.
Junket.
Yeah, junket, yeah. It was really cool. It was, I've been haunting junk shops for 45 records and collecting records up, and became fascinated with the lifestyle that people who own junk shops seem to have. They didn't have to seemingly be nice to people or whatever. Not that I'm not nice to people, but it just looked like a good lifestyle. And so instead of, I canned the idea of going to England, and we opened up a junk shop on Papanui Road, which was a hell of a lot of fun. And
I'm sure I lived at Papanui in those years, and I don't remember it. I was obviously going in the other direction, but what kind of junk? Is that a euphemism for rather classy antiques, or was it junky junk?
It was, well, if I got rather classy antiques, I traded them off with it's one of the antique dealers down in Mirabale, which were down the road. I was right on the corner of Papanui and Beeley, which was right opposite the Carlton Hotel, and there was an old house, and I had some good stuff, but it was a big student area in those days, and so I was dealing all sorts of, just whatever. It was great fun. It was, I had a great time. I met lots of people. I'd only been in Christchurch a few months when we were able to open the shop, and I just met a whole lot of interesting people, from people like John Britton. That's where I met John. He came in because he was doing up his old truck, and he came in looking for stuff. So
John Britton of the famous motorcycle Britain, for people who can't quite place that name.
Without wanting to be name dropping and stuff like that, it's funny in my life where people have just seemingly come into my life, and
I
that's
suspect you have one of those magnetic personalities.
Well, I don't know about that, but
I think you do. I think you must. Let us have a listen. Let us have a listen to a track that you've chosen, and this is going right back to the roots. This is Blind Willie McTell and his wife, Kate McTell. God Don't Like It. This is 1935, I think.
Yeah.
And he was
awesome.
Yeah. He was, I don't know whether this can't have been the recording. John and Ruby Lomax recorded him in 1940. And Dylan, which is a bit of a refrain, Bob Dylan, through all the tracks you've chosen, Dylan did a tribute to Blind Willie McTell, did he not?
He did, yeah. Brian Rupert Mattel was pretty awesome player. He could play lots of different styles. And when I was like in my teen years, I was importing records and into New Zealand, £5 postal notes and that days and those days. And I imported this Brian William Mattel record. It's really, really awesome. And it was at Lomax interviewing him, and he just had all these great stories to tell. And then later on, I heard this track here. It's just such a beautiful raw recording, and I grew up with all those blues guys back in those days, and this was pretty special.
Where did you hear them?
Well, funny enough, it was like Bob Dylan, and I turned 13 in 1962. I always think that was kind of like pretty influential because everything was happening, and like Bob Dylan, and it was really, really big for me, huge, and so like just listening to him and reading what he was saying back just when I was a kid, he put me onto all that blues stuff, and then of course the Stones came along and were doing all the Chicago blues covers, and it was impossible not to. I just loved it all. So and then I just started chasing blues records and importing blues records from England that were imported into England from the States. So I ended up with this great record collection, which is how I met a whole lot of people when I moved into Wellington, because people heard of my record collection.
Those were the days of deferred gratification.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's when I met people like Simon Morris and Tony Backhouse, and they kind of came calling to have listened to my records.
Some say they done cut whiskey out, but you can have a little wine. Most everybody gets on or drunk by drinking this old moonshine. Now God don't like it, and I don't either. Now God don't like it, and I don't either. Now God don't like it, and I don't either. Scandalous and a shame.
I think that's what old people say. Bill Hammond was the washboard player, spoons and tambourine with the Band of Hope Jug Band in 1968. Also, the percussion on the TV Okie Spooky show. What was that?
I have no idea, but like I have a story. I actually saw Bill Hammond years before I met him, and it would have been around that time. I was living in Nainai, and I took my girlfriend in. The guy up the road from me was at Island, and he said to me, "You've got to see this band, the Band of Hope Jug Band." And it just so happened they were coming to Wellington. I thought it was maybe a little earlier than that. I thought it was about 17, I think, when I saw them. But anyway, they were playing at the Belvedere, which was up on Water Street, and it was a double-storied house. And we went in there and climbed up the stairs into this room upstairs, and it was the Belvedere, and it was kind of it was bohemian. We were like Brad and Janet, like we were from the birth, and we were like these two kids, and we just walked into this den of people with long hair and stuff, and it was kind of like when the Band of Hope were playing, and Warwick Rock was the singer, and Bill Hammond and a guy called Dobbin were sort of located in the corner playing washboard, and Warwick was pretty drunk and having a real good time in his flying helmet and his little goggles and everything, and he was up front, and they were sitting back in the corner taking the mickey out of him the whole time. It was just totally memorable for I so remember Bill Hammond, but also I remember it's the first time I'd ever seen Warwick Rock, and they were both people I later met just by chance down here in Christchurch, and they'd stuck themselves into my brain that night. I would have always remembered it, and yeah, so that was the Band of Hope, and they were an awesome band, jug band.
When you opened your junk shop in Christchurch, you also had Vapor and the Trails, a punk band at the time, did you not?
Well, it didn't. That's sort of because I'd been in Wellington, and all the musicians I knew in Wellington were really top class musicians, like Tony Backhouse and Bill Lake and Simon Morris. They were all kind of we were all together at uni, and I sort of like used to go and watch music a lot. I played a bit of guitar, but never met anyone to sort of play with. When I came to Christchurch and I had Junk Shop, I started meeting people, and a couple of the people said, "Let's form a band." And so
was the Junk Shop a kind of a magnet for your sort of people? Is that how it worked?
Well, it's funny how I came here and I just started. It was weird. I just started collecting people, and it sounds like a weird thing to say, but it was. It was, I'd come from Wellington. I'd been hanging out and with a lot of interesting people, and just the same thing started to happen down here. And so I started meeting all these people, a lot of them from out of Christchurch who had moved to Christchurch, and like with John, and then his girlfriend came back, and kicked things real quick. We started doing performance things in this old butcher shop just down the road from Junket, and that led to sort of forming this band, and then that led to finding this old market where we opened a club to have our own little private club, because you did things for yourself in those days, and then people started coming to this club, and they were like musicians and punk musicians, and so all of a sudden I went from like not knowing any musicians in Christchurch to being the spokesman for this whole new punk movement and new wave movement. It was kind of like, that's pretty quick summation of what I did, but and so I started giving all these musicians a place to play. And it was very cool. And so then Vapor on the Trail started to get real big, and I thought, well, and the Junk Shop started to lose some of its interest because my partner and I started to have different ideas, and so I just sold out to him and started playing music all the time.
And the rest, as they say, is history. Somebody, I'm not sure we've had a satisfactory explanation for OD, but O with a line through it means zero, and there are various surveyor types texting in, trying to give me a complicated explanation, but I can tell you about the Ookie Spooky show, which you seriously missed out on. It was probably around 1968, or in the early 70s. It was a TV show aired on NZBC, and Ookie was a helium balloon covered with a net curtain who floated about to spooky music. So now we know where Bill Hammond got his artistic ideas from.
Probably, I have to say, and the one thing is I've missed out on my life was TV. I have never watched a lot of TV. Anyway, that's beside the point, but Bill was pretty good at those days.
It doesn't seem to have done you any harm.
No.
So you've got Vapor on the Trails going.
Yeah.
But you had, a bit of a broken heart, or you broke somebody's heart, and off you went to California.
Yeah. I went to California for almost a year, hung out, picked up a lot of different music again. Like I stayed about 8 or 9 months, and then decided that I was like, that even though I was meeting people and it was kind of fun, I started to think that I was wasting a lot of time standing in queues and driving in traffic, and I guess I loved Littleton when I'd first come here, and I thought, no, I'm going back to Littleton. And so jumped on a plane, came back home, and I had a bunch of, early rap records, Grandma's Flash, that I picked up. I'd been made aware of Kid Creole and Coconuts. It was like a diverse, like a bunch of music that I had, and I came back with, and I had this idea of putting a band together that would be reflect some of the music. And so I did that. I came back and spent about I'd had an organic garden just before I left as well, and I came back and did a bit more work on that and put a band together, which was called Louie and the Hostics, and that became pretty successful.
Marine Tavern, Sumner.
Yep. It's a funny thing. All my life, I figured that up until recently I started recording, that I just loved playing live. I loved the immediacy of live. I loved the connection with the audience, and in those days it was like a 11 o'clock closing. You played 3 sets, and you could really build a setup and and like have people going crazy for it. And we would put 500 people on there on Friday and Saturday nights, and it just became such a great way of life. I didn't have to go out on the road and travel or anything. I was just happy being in a little town, having my own little scene. And so sort of like that's what it became.
You mentioned Adam Hattaway a little earlier. So we'll play the track you've chosen, Adam Hattaway and the Haunters, Waiting for the Chill. Yeah. He's on tour at the moment, isn't he, with Taz Liuto?
Yeah, really talented boy. And a friend of mine says about Hattaway, says, and because we have those sessions here, and anyone can turn up, it could be Delaney, it could be Elders, anyone on a Wednesday night. And, often there's only 10 people in the audience, but they're always good fun.
You're talking about the Wunderbar, right?
Well, no, I'm talking about, we moved from the Wunderbar to the Loons, and now at the moment, because of COVID, we're now in this great little bar called Commoners, which is, funny enough, in the basement or in the bottom bar of the British Hotel, which is the legendary British Hotel.
Uh-huh.
And in fact, Marlon was there a couple of months ago because he's been out of town for a long time. But the interesting thing about that is that people turn up, and the other musicians they're playing with are like ARA kids, or like people who are, not top flight musicians, but like they get to play with these people, and it's been hugely satisfying just to see how that all works. Marlon will walk in and end up, playing with, someone who's not long learning bass or whatever, and and he's real good with them. It's real sweet. But so Hattaway though he is a very talented boy, and I really have done a lot of work with him, and also the other guy who's written this song is Elmore Jones, and so they've got a band called Adam Hattaway and the Haunters, and they're pretty prolific songwriting and producing, and they've helped me immensely with not only the album we're putting out Pony, but we've just been down in the Sublime Studios in Kurau recording some more, which was real fun. It's another story. But definitely, Adam's definitely worth a listen. And yep.
Well, read the letter you left on the windowsill. Read it in the dark, and I feel the chill. Two star-crossed lovers already over the hill.
Hattaway and the Haunters, Waiting for the Chill. I'm talking to Al Park. The OD, the most likely explanation, which is no explanation really, but here it is. The O with the line through, followed by a D, was known, this is an explanation for why a band was called Old Dennis, the band that you were in, Bill Hammond, with Old Dennis. OD. The O with the line through, followed by a D, was known as Phi Delta, i.e. seen as Greek letters. No one really knew who painted them all over Christchurch, but the common theory was that it was punks, who were probably the most antisocial people around at the time, says Nick, with a tone of authority. And, moreover, Al Park, Sam says that he asked Bill Hammond if it was true that some of the titles of his paintings came from songs contained within your record collection that Bill ended up with for a time, and his answer was yes.
Yeah.
Did you know that?
But well, I did. When I went to California, I have a huge 45 collection, and I left it with Bill. But I think Bill's explanation for OD is the best one. Anyway.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say about Adam Hattaway again. and Elmore Jones, they're both playing with me on my release, along with Bruce Hambling, has been in my gig band, which I've had.
They're both playing with you on Pony.
They're playing with me on Pony, but I'm doing an album release at the Loons on the 27th of May, and so they're in the band along with Bruce Hambling, who's the drummer for the Dudes, and my bass player from Hot Sticks. It's kind of like a nice combination of the old and young, and also I've got Adam McGrath emceeing and playing, and Jess Shanks from Eastern, a little buzz, what you'd expect.
Do you ever fall out with anyone? I mean, apart from Jane Campion.
There's probably a few people I might have sort of slightly fallen out with, but mostly I'm pretty friendly. So if I've fallen out, I've usually fallen back in.
I mean, generally speaking, the music scene, is incredibly collegial, especially in New Zealand. But, I often wonder whether there are hatchets that need burying. Do you think that it's quite a friendly scene?
Well, it's a friendly scene for me because, once I had the music venue, Elsbar. Like I met a lot of people who I had known or whatever, and I've found everyone to be like really, really, really nice people. But in fact,
what's that noise, Al?
It might have been my phone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you put it on mute?
Yeah. I can turn it off.
Because there'll be people saying how nice it is to hear you on the radio.
Well,
so you could turn it
is.
off. Yeah, Al's Bar. I'm glad you mentioned it in Dundas Street. 2006, you set that up, right?
Yeah, my brother helped me big time there. He lives in Wellington, and he's been pretty amazing. People have really supported me. I've been a very lucky guy. Like for all the fact that I might have supported lots of people in their own ways. My brother's was really supportive to me, especially in Al's Bar, and his friends are kind of reasonably wealthy businessmen in Wellington, and Al's Bar, that was hard work. Probably the hardest I've worked in my life, and I really wanted to be successful. I really wanted a good music venue, and I think that in my head that I knew what that was, and I was well on my way to it. But of course, the earthquakes were a massive thing here, and the building alongside me just totally, it was a brick building. Liquefaction took that out, and ultimately affected my building as well. It was a shame because I was really, really starting to motor. As much as it might have been telling on my health and my appearance, I was actually really starting to feel that I was getting successful. The September earthquake had sort of been a blow, and then February was.
Are you as you're talking to me, you're fiddling with your phone, aren't you? And failing.
I want to turn it off.
And failing to turn it off. In fact, you're just giving us a variety of different sounds. Very nice.
Oh man!
Did you ever want to set up another venue when Al's Bar had to close? Did you not want to set up another one ever?
I initially I did but then I sort of like, as the further I got away from it, the further I got away from it, the less I wanted to do it. And what had happened is that after earthquakes, I started putting things on down at the Yacht Club in Littleton. It was the only venue or only standing place that you could gather people. And so the further I got away from it, I started to play a lot more again, and I was doing these shows down in the Yacht Club, which were really, 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 it was like for the community, but we did some great shows that night down there, and it was so much fun. And the further I got away from the bar, the less I wanted to do it. But funny enough, Alistair Cassell, who's having a memorial today at the Tannery, approached me and asked me to do Al's Bar there, and I was interested, but that faded. And the further I got away from it, the less I wanted to do it. But it was kind of like Al's Bar was a bit like, if you played football, it was like instead of scoring the winning goal, I kind of felt like I had a crossbar. I never felt like that people say, oh, it was very successful, but I wanted it to be really, really successful.
Right. And you're saying that it wasn't really, really successful?
Well, it was, and I had a lot, and I was really developing great contacts.
You needed more time.
Needed more time.
Yeah. I think one of the tracks that you've chosen is Steve Earle, and I think we'll play him now because in tribute to his son Justin Townes Earle, who played at Ellsbury, I think, didn't he?
Yeah, well, amazing night that was. It was a Sunday night, and funny enough, we ended up back in the Wunderbar, and we didn't leave there till 6 a.m. on Monday morning, and McGrath was there, and they were both tall guys. Justin was a real string bean kind of tall guy, and McGrath, I think you know Adam, he's a big brute of a guy, and I finished with McGrath picking, Justin up, and sort of it was the most amazing, bizarre night. Anyway, I always thought those two big guys, tall guys, were it was a night out.
Yes,
but he was a great guy.
Steve Earle and the Dukes. While we're playing this, you might like to either turn your phone off or defenestrate it.
I'll turn my phone off.
One or the other. Steve Earle and the Dukes with Guitar Town, one of the picks of Al Park. How's the phone, Al?
Phone's gone, Kim.
Really?
Yeah.
You
well,
just
the thing was,
thrown it out the window.
Thrown it out the window. Yeah.
I love Steve Earle, and he told me, and I should have verified it, that his father, or was it his grandfather, set up AA.
Oh, really? Well, unfortunately, I would have to say that probably Justin both of them could have probably dealt with AA because both had substance issues.
Of course, I know.
But both, I love Steve Earle. I just started working. I just started managing a second-hand store, Echo Records, which was a part of my life, which was like living in a sitcom, really. And,
what? High Fidelity.
Yeah, it was so much fun. Yeah. People like Jeremy Taylor, who you have on regularly, who now has Slow Boat, he was working with me, but there was just a bunch of people. It was just so much fun. It was like, and that's when I first I've always been into music, but so was into Steve, and then I met Justin, and had chats about his dad. Yeah, it was good.
Did they get on?
Well, they didn't appear to get on, but I think in later years they did. There was issues, but Justin was definitely, he wrote a beautiful song for his mum, and he seemed to have more of that. But yeah, Steve was a pretty tricky guy, I think.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, but you are obviously an exception, Al. But a lot of the people in the music business who've developed certain habits, many of them have, they're all a bit tricky, aren't they?
Yeah, it's that side of the music business. I for some reason have managed to avoid that. I won't make no bones about the fact that I've always been a bit of, I've liked a bit of the marijuana, but it's, I haven't seen a lot of it, to be honest, even when I was running the bar. But there's no denying. I mean, I've known lots of people who have indulged. So, but it's never been part of my thing. I don't think it's that healthy, really, is it? I mean, it stops you doing things.
No. So. And what are you? You're 70 plus now.
I'm 72, coming up to 73 this year. It's funny. I don't know if you've seen Marlon's new song called "My Boy," but
I was listening to it the other day.
It's so cool because, as a man, it's hard to kind of not deny the boy in you, And that's what I loved about that song is that it's sort of it acknowledges the fact. And Marlon's I think 31 now, but at 72, I can still feel a lot of the boy in me, and I would never really want to lose that. But I'm definitely getting older. That's what's happening.
But you
know.
sound,
When your kids start getting to be 30 this year and everything, you're going, whoa, you know, you start to realise that you're starting to pile the years on.
yeah, but they can help you with the technology, Al.
Ah, well, that's what's so good about the young guys. You're so right
I
there,
can
Kim.
see them helping you find out how to turn your phone off after the show. You've lived in Littleton for how long?
Well, and this is a weird thing because I never thought that I'd stay in one place. Not only have I lived in Littleton for 42 or 3 or 4 years, I've lived in the same place essentially for, well, actually I didn't. When I first came over here, I lived in another house not far from this one. And then when I came back from the States, I moved in here and I've been here ever since. Raised a family, had great times, and I've never moved. I have an awesome sort of view of the Littleton Harbour, and even though at this time of the year the sun sort of isn't as great as it is in other parts of Littleton, I never wanted to move. I've just loved it, and I've loved living in Littleton. It's a beautiful little town in its own way, you know. And I think the other thing is that I've loved the community of Littleton. I haven't always been super involved, but I love the fact that I live in a little community, and you know, there's something really sweet about knowing people and you know, say hi and get involved in projects.
Yeah. I was talking to Delaney Davidson the other day, who lives there, and he was, I mean, I said to him, you must know everyone. Everyone must know everyone.
Well, you say that, and then people say, "Oh, do you know?" Like yesterday, this young guy who I know, who's actually in Marlon's video, said to me, "Oh, you know, do you know Jim Dunbar, whatever his name was, the builder guy who lives down?" And I'm going, "Yeah, I do." And so you don't know him. I mean, there's 3,000 people, and you know, so but you do know him. Yeah, and I think that's kind of like people these days. Quite often, when you see what they value or they want to value as community. Well, if that is, I've had a great time in this little community.
Yeah.
To be a part of it, and you know, and the variety of people who live here is awesome. You know,
Oh, you're not all musos.
No, but like, of course, I know the lady, and I hang out with the lady a lot. We have dinners, and we, you know, like, you know, I heard Delaney's interview. You know, I have a lot of time for Delaney. He's an exceptional person. They all are. That's the thing. I mean, like people are. Hammond used to have a thing on his fridge, which was sort of some quote that came from one of the old poets, which was something like, you know, a blade of grass has been a blade of grass. People are the subject of my inquiry, and I always thought that was sort of applied to me. I enjoy people. Doesn't matter if it's a supermarket guy or whatever, you know, whoever. Yeah.
I think we'll wrap up with the Kinks song that you've chosen, Autumn Almanac, Al.
Yeah, brilliant song, Kim.
Featuring Ray and Dave Davies, of course, from 1967.
Yeah, I just thought it was appropriate for the time of the year, and it's one of the greatest pop songs ever written, as far as I'm concerned. It sort of never really repeats itself. It's a very, very clever piece of pop writing, and yeah, it seemed very appropriate for our Saturday morning chat.
Lovely to talk to you. The best of luck with the album launch, Al Park. First solo album for 20-something.
Yeah.
It's called Pony. Nice to talk to you, Al. Kia ora.
Really nice to talk to you too, Kim. Kia ora.